Today, we are talking about brain fog, right? You ever have those days when you just can't remember where you left your keys, or you walked into the room and you're like, why am I in this room? Or how about when someone's talking and you're like, it just phased out. I don't even know what you just said, right? All of that is what people call brain fog. And the thing about brain fog is like, you can remember a time where you didn't feel this way. Like you weren't always like this. Something's changed. And the question is it a big deal or is it just something you should accept? If you watch any of my episodes, you know that I'm not going to let you just accept this, not accept it as part of aging or as part of your new normal, because brain fog is actually a sign that something is wrong. What I'm going to show you today is that brain fog is the check engine light that things are not okay and that you need to get on it or else the whole car is going to break down, okay? So I always like to let you know how to reach me and my team. Follow us everywhere, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, you name it, we're here, podcast, we're here for you. Let's jump in. What is brain fog? Now, you know I always start with definitions. Now, this one's a little tricky because it's not a medical term, right? Brain fog is not something you find in your anatomy textbook, but anyone who's experienced it knows exactly what it means, right? You find it hard to focus, find it hard to keep things in memory. You're a little less sharp in processing information. It feels like it takes you 10 hours to complete like a 10-minute task. Or maybe you're really struggling to stay in the conversation or in the meeting, really struggling to understand what's being said. Or maybe you walk into a room and you're like, what the heck am I doing here? Right? This is what people describe as having brain fog. Now, brain fog isn't a medical condition in itself, but it's a symptom. It's a symptom that something else is going on, right? It's an umbrella term that describes symptoms, but it's really a signal, okay? Now, these symptoms can vary. Let's just go through like a bunch of, things that fit under the brain fog. For some people, it's this feeling of fatigue, just can't get that energy up, inability to focus or concentrate, trouble in remembering. For some people, it's mood changes because you actually get irritated a little bit when you're trying to recall, trouble sleeping, confusion, inability to find the word, like, what's that thing? I know it, it's at the tip of my tongue, trying to grasp concepts and having a hard time grasping concepts, or if you're easily pulled off a track or distracted, okay? And you weren't like this before. This is something new. So that's brain fog. So why is this happening? Why do you feel this way? Now, sometimes you know the reason for brain fog, right? You might brush it off like, hey, I really didn't sleep well last night. I can't focus. Or, last night I stayed out late. I had a drink. I'm really not clear the next day. And that is brain fog, but you know what it's about, so you kind of dismiss it. Even that kind of brain fog is actually a sign of neuroinflammation. Now, that's a fancy word for your brain is inflamed. Your brain is on fire. When our joints are inflamed, they hurt. When our belly's inflamed, we get bloating. But when our brain is inflamed, it starts with brain fog, difficulty focus. So when you start thinking brain fog or like fuzzy or not clear, I want you to start thinking of neuroinflammation. So instead of saying, oh man, I really can't focus today, I want you to say, wow, I am really neuroinflamed today, because you're going to start seeing it in a really different light. Neuroinflammation is like a small alarm bell in your brain. It occurs when your brain's defense mechanism, your immune system, knows something's wrong. Right? Think of neuroinflammation as your brain's way of trying to fight back something that's not right. Something's happening that's really trying to fight back. And when it finds something, toxin, infection, or something out of the ordinary, it goes into action mode. And this is what neuroinflammation is. We're going to go a little deep. This is going to be a little bit sciencey. So if you don't like the science part, skip a few minutes and then come back here. And if you want to, understand a little bit more, stay here with me. Inflammation has to do with immune cells called macrophages. And that's basically our defense team. Our team in our brain could be on one of two teams, the M1 team or the M2 team. Now, the M1 team, they bring inflammation. They see something's up and they are ready, right? They bring the fire, they bring the guns, and they are ready to kill off the attack. Now, the M2 team, they're the anti-inflammatory mediators and they protect neurons. So they're like the medics that come to clean up the damage. So M1 brings the fire and M2 brings the fire extinguisher. Right? And both of them have a job to do in the brain. They're constantly working. If there's an attack, M1 comes in, then M2 comes in to repair. And it's constantly, fighting things and calming things down. So if in the short term, we have some M1 activation, we didn't sleep, we drank, we feel a little fuzzy, then M2 comes in and we recover. But if M1 is constantly activated every day, all day, you start feeling fuzzy for a really long time. And this fuzziness is inflammation. Okay? Because it's interrupting how the brain cells communicate because they're so busy managing this fire. It's like trying to have a phone conversation in a really loud room. Like, there's a conversation happening, the phone is working, but you really can't make out the words. So now you start understanding that when you experience that brain fog, it's because something's triggering your brain's defense system. Whether it's too much alcohol, lack of sleep, or stress, we're going to talk about more. Your brain goes into protection mode to fight off these triggers, which is good, but the process leaves you feeling less sharp. But if your brain has to constantly deal with triggers every day, all day, every day, all day, you're going to be stuck in this loop of fuzziness, right? Which can lead to worse and worse things. So what happens if we ignore brain fog? You could start seeing that if we ignore this brain fog, this inflammation can take up permanent residence, right? It won't go away. And over time, this becomes a chronic issue. This becomes, could lead to death of the neurons. It can set the stage for dementia, for Alzheimer's. So you see that brain fog is the beginning of a process. You don't want to ignore it. You don't want to, that is a normal part of aging because it's going somewhere. It can lead to dementia, right? That, by the way, dementia is just like a broad term for a decline in brain power, which includes Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's is a form of dementia, just so you know. We're starting to see how it goes, right? So neuroinflammation is a fire alarm in your brain. And normally the brain's immune system, your M1 and your M2, they help with the day-to-day brain maintenance. But the situation changes if you have this chronic inflammation. It's like a false fire alarm that's always on. And now these cells become overactive. So now they're starting to cause more harm than good. And they can start hurting the neurons, the nerves in your brain, in a whole bunch of ways. These ways have a domino effect, okay? So they can directly harm it, right? Because they're like inflammatory, they directly harm the neurons. It could also affect something called the blood-brain barrier. This is going to be important when we talk about supplements, so pay attention here. The blood-brain barrier, that's a barrier that protects our brain so that only certain things can come into the brain. We don't want every single thing that's in the blood to also go into the brain. So we have this really cool blood-brain barrier. But this constant inflammation is going to weaken that barrier, allow more and more things to come in. So we have inflammation causing direct cell death. We have inflammation affecting the blood-brain barrier. And we have inflammation now in this whole weakened state, right? It's not nourished, it's constantly on fire. Now, if there's any toxicity around, it's going to affect it even more. So this domino effect starts with brain fog and slowly worsens and can really start affecting everyday functions like memory, thinking, reasoning. It also, we're really focused on memory, but it also can trigger something like chronic pain syndrome, right? Because inflammation in the brain can start really creating this like overactive reaction that now the smallest pain becomes this huge messaging. And it's a pain that won't quit. So chronic pain syndrome is also related to neuroinflammation, in case you're suffering with that. I think you're starting to see that brain fog is a big deal, because it is neuroinflammation. Once you start calling it neuroinflammation instead of brain fog, it's going to come kind of intuitively to understand that it's a big deal. So we get it. It's a big deal. But what do? How do we start fixing it? And so the first part is, I'm going to say, if you've seen any of my episodes, that I'm going to say that if your belly is off, your brain is off. Now, anyone who's new here, you're going to say, what does my belly have to do with my brain? And that's because you're so used to the fact that your GI office is very separate from the neurology office. And we start to believe that our body parts are not connected. But there is such a thing called a gut-brain axis. Gut-brain axis is constant communication, right? First of all, the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is literally a nerve from your brain to your belly. It's a highway of information that goes back and forth. If the gut is inflamed, it sends signals of inflammation and back and forth. Second is your gut microbiome. If you're new here, find the episode of microbiome. I talk about it pretty much all the time. But in the microbiome, it's a factory for neurotransmitters, okay? For your serotonin, for your dopamine, it's literally made in your belly. So connected all the time. And then leaky gut. I did a whole episode on leaky gut, but if you have a leaky gut, it will start affecting your blood-brain barrier as well. Leaky gut causes leaky brain, because now your GI also has a lining, it also has a barrier. Now it starts to let certain toxins in. And then over time, that causes inflammation and can also weaken the blood-brain barrier. So things are connected. So having a balanced gut is a critical part of your brain. What happened to my belly? Why did it get so messed up? It wasn't always like this. Well, number one, poor nutrition, right? If you're on the standard American diet, hi, you got to catch up, watch all the episodes, get off the standard American diet. You're a little late, but let's go. Okay, you have to get off standard American diet. The sugar messes with our insulin, the unhealthy fats and fast food. Our standard American diet has high omega-6 and low omega-3. We want to reverse that, more 3s, less 6. We don't want processed foods. So nutrition has to change because that can mess with our belly, and our belly messes with our brain. Number two, stress. Stress causes inflammation, right? So if your brain is like a computer, when it's under a lot of pressure, asking it to constantly do too many tasks, it can crash or freeze. And that's what happens to your brain undergoing stress. And that overheating for us is going to be in the form of inflammation. If you're constantly in fight or flight mode, you're pretty much stuck in inflammation, and your body is not diverting any resources towards healing and calming down inflammation. Lack of sleep, lack of sleep, lack of sleep, okay? I say this every time. I don't care how much gluten-free ice you're eating. If you're not sleeping, your health is not on point. You're just not giving yourself the best shot. Lack of sleep cranks up inflammation in your body and in your brain. When you don't get enough sleep, your brain doesn't get a chance to do housekeeping. It doesn't get a chance to repair. And now that you understand that not enough sleep causes neuroinflammation, you can understand why lack of sleep can cause dementia. It's causative for dementia because this neuroinflammation over time, now you understand why it does that. Chronic infections. If you're dealing with any type of chronic infections, Lyme disease, H. pylori, again, that's a chronic infection. That's a constant low-level inflammation, and that is going to affect neuroinflammation. Why? Because things are connected. Okay, so now we have all these things. We have nutrition, sleep, but we also have to talk about some external, right? Infections, mold. All these things can affect your brain. And so you have to kind of manage all these things, which brings us to how do we clear the fog? We have to address what's the issue. Is it that my nutrition's on point? Is it that I'm too stressed out? Is it that I have an underlying infection? Am I exposed to something toxic? You have to find the source to reduce the inflammation to manage your brain fog. But you can't just ignore the brain fog and think, oh, it's nothing, right? So fix your nutrition, off the standard American diet, add the rainbow to your plate, get good protein, get good fats. If you want more details on this, I have another episode on this. I just don't want to make this episode too long. And I really want to spend some time on some pretty cool supplements that I want to talk to you about. So fix your nutrition, fix your leaky gut. Another episode on that where we talk about remove, replace, reinoculate, repair, rebalance. Make sure you get on that episode. Get your sleep, address your stress. Now, of course, you can't eliminate stress from your lives. I wish, but we can be mindful. And mindful doesn't mean like full-blown meditation. God bless if you could do that. That's amazing. It just means taking a moment, taking a deep breath, noticing when you're eating, being present in your conversations, right? So that's what we mean when we say addressing stress. So now let's talk about supplements, because this is a good one about supplements. But remember, when we talk about supplements, right, you have to first get everything else on point. If you're still eating standard American diet, if you're a hot mess with your nutrition, supplements will not work. Okay, the supplements are supplemental. So we're going to talk about 4 supplements today, and I'm going to spend a little bit more time than I usually do on supplements because some of these are really cool. So first, we got to give a shout out to turmeric. Okay, it's not really a supplement, it's a spice, but we can get it in supplement form. Obviously a spice in nature, and it's been shown to cross that blood-brain barrier, right? So it's nature's anti-inflammatory that crosses the blood-brain barrier we were talking about earlier. And it can actually accumulate in the brain and can create protection for our neurons. It's been studied to show inhibition, like not allowing the formation of the plaques that are connected to Alzheimer's, okay? So it's a really big deal for Alzheimer's. And it's shown that turmeric, curcumin, I'm using the words interchangeably, also release a really cool thing called brain-derived neurotropic factor, BDNF, which is basically miracle grow for your brain. So turmeric, put it on your food, get it in the pill, just get it in there. There's another supplement that's a spice that you may not have heard as much about, and it's called saffron. Saffron is a spice, but when taken at higher dosage as a supplement, it is packed with so many benefits that can help fight off brain fog. Because it's an antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, it's neuroprotective. The chemicals in saffron have been found to protect brain cells, and they reduce brain swelling. They encourage brain survival. It helps increase brain signals, like how they talk to each other. And so overall, when you take saffron, it helps improve your memory, your mood, your cognitive function. And this is really cool. There's studies on saffron that shows that it's as effective as Ritalin for ADHD. Okay? Saffron is just an amazing spice. By the way, the company that I use for my saffron is called Life Extension. They are really the only company that I've seen that puts like a lot in a capsule. So you might want to consider getting that. I don't sell it on my website, but you can go to Life Extension and get it. Speaking of Life Extension, there's 2 more supplements that I want you to consider getting. One is magnesium L-threonate, okay? Not all magnesiums are created equal. Each magnesium is different. I just did a TikTok and I listed out all the different magnesiums. See if you could try to find that. So magnesium is basically the first name, and then they have a different last name, right? Like citrate, sulfate, etc. And this last name has different effects on the body because you can't just take magnesium. Magnesium's a metal, so you can't just take magnesium. You have to kind of compound it to something. And what it's compounded to makes a difference. Now, magnesium L-threonate is particularly good for the brain. Well, let me first talk about magnesium, right? Magnesium itself is great for the brain because it helps with these neurotransmitters. It helps with something called synaptic plasticity. That's a fancy way of saying like how your brain can adapt quickly to new information. And it also helps with serotonin and dopamine. So magnesium in the brain is very much needed. But as I said earlier, you can't just take magnesium, okay? So you need to get it compounded with that last name I was telling you about. All different kinds of magnesium, all different last names, but not all forms of magnesium are absorbed the same way. And not all of them cross that blood-brain barrier, right? So magnesium threonate crosses the blood-brain barrier and has been shown from all the other types of magnesium to be absorbed in the brain the best. So this magnesium is especially great for brain function, right? There's other times I give different magnesiums for different priorities. But if you're talking about brain, magnesium threonate is where it's at. Okay, now it is a rare find. You are not going to find it at CVS. You're not going to find it at Costco because that threonate is a little bit more expensive and a little bit harder to compound. So you're not going to see this at your grocery store. So again, I sourced that one from Life Extension. So if you're taking mag to boost your brain, magnesium L-threonate is the one to take. Okay, if you take a mag for other reasons, then it's different magnesiums. Like I said, I put a whole list together. And last but not least for your brain is NAD. NAD is something that's found in all living cells. It helps your DNA repair, it helps cellular signaling, it helps calm down your stress response. And as we age, we make less and less NAD. So we want to put that back in, right? You want to boost your NAD levels. But taking NAD orally doesn't really do the trick. In our office, we give it IV, but taking it orally doesn't really get absorbed well. So you take a supplement, what's called a precursor, a supplement that when you take it becomes NAD in your body, right? And so Life Extension also has one called NAD+. The main ingredient there is something called Niagen, which once you take it, makes your body produce its own NAD. Okay, so those are the supplements I really want you to focus on. Turmeric, I just actually put it in my food, and the other 3 I get from Life Extension. So recapping this, okay? Recapping this. Don't ignore your brain fog. Don't accept it as part of aging. Don't accept it as just, I'm tired. It's a sign. It's your check engine light. It's a sign of neuroinflammation. And if you leave it unchecked, it can take permanent residence in your brain, and you're going to have a whole host of problems. But the good news is, as always, is that you have control over this foggy feeling. And you have control, you can reverse it, find the cause, fix the belly, get rid of the infection, take the supplements, do what you need to do to get your brain back. Because remember, it's all about listening to your body and responding with care. Be patient with yourself. It's not going to happen overnight. Small little changes brings you closer to that goal that you have. And just know that you can do this. You're not alone. If you want to reach out to me and my team, we're at The New Method, new spelled with a K. We're on every platform. And I just want you to get the answers that you deserve because you always knew there was a better way. I will see you guys next week.